Correct. There we go. That's correct. And we still got this guy on the stand for, I don't know, definitely today and tomorrow. Maybe a tiny bit of the next day.
Right. Again, there is a filter which focuses, it's a focusing device, but which filters out other things and pushes them aside and looks for 160 masses. Those 160 masses are gathered together, and one by one they hit a detector. So the detector says, I see things, I see things, I see things, and they are 160s because the others have been filtered out.
Now, can we go to slide M, please? So if you were trying to determine whether EDTA was present in a substance, what are the three things that you would look for with this kind of testing?
The first thing that you look for is if I extract something with water and put it through my column that I'm using in this experiment, where I've tested EDTA and found that it comes out in 5-6 minutes or whatever. Will something come out at 6 minutes? That's the retention time, or whatever the retention time is. Then, what I will do is to have a mass spectrometer look at what comes out at that retention time and tell me whether I'll focus on the 293, whether there's anything 293, which is also a characteristic of EDTA. So the retention time is one characteristic. The 293 that I'm looking at, that means I'm only looking for orange-eyed people, you might say. If I see orange-eyed people, I count them. Others I don't count. I take all the orange-eyed people after I've counted them and throw them in the next mass spectrometer, and it breaks them up and only leaves the orange eyes, which weigh 160, let's say.
So we're looking for those three things.
Retention time, well, no, we look for more than that. We look for water solubility, because that's how we got it. We look for it going through the column at all, because a lot of things don't go through that column. And also that if it does go through the column, that it takes it as much time and no more and no less than the window that I know will contain EDTA. So that's really, in a sense, the third parameter. Then comes the, does it contain enough molecular ions, 293 masses, you know, are there enough guys in there or gals with 293 on their shirts so that I can actually count them? Because if it's less than a certain number, I can't really count them. So can I see them? Are they there in my detection, within my detection limit? Then, after breaking...
I find counting much, much, much easier the less there is of something. Because, look, I have one straw. That was easy. But if I had 700, yeah, I would be here for 700 time long.
Picking those up. The third parameter is the pieces that have 160 tattooed on them. And that's what we're looking for. So that we have essentially 5 parameters.
Did you want to take a break? 5 minutes. Okay. Now, also, one of the other things that is measured in this system is what's called ion count.
Yes.
And that's, is that essentially counting the number of ions that are getting through to the 160 stage there?
Well, it's counting the number of ions that the detector can see, and where it can separate the counts one from the other, where it can really count 1, 2, 3, 4. And that means that the detector has to snap.
See how easy that was, sir?
Before the next ion gets there. Otherwise, it'll record 2 as 1. So it depends on how quickly it is scanning what's coming in. And if it scans 1,000 times a second, it's not going to miss many particles, many 293s. But if it scans it 50 times a second, then it'll count 10 as 1, you know, like a bunch. So, but that's what it does. It gives you a measure of the amount of that particular 293 or 160 that has come into the mass spectrometer, has been ionized, and then in the first one seen and counted as 293 ions. And then in the second one, how many counts did the detector make?
Now, can we go to the next slide, please? Slide N. In the testing done by the FBI, did you review material indicating that they had tested a swatch from the back gate representing stain number 117?
Yes.
And what number did the FBI assign to that stain, that swatch?
I would have to see the numbering system. I think I have it here. May I?
Sure.
Refresh my memory.
They had a civil trial in 1997. But I don't know what they won. Let's look. He was found liable for the deaths. $35 million he was ordered to pay. But I don't think he paid it. Hold on. Simpson avoided paying most of the judgment for years. Recent news indicates his estate may finally
They
be
gave
settling
that the
some of the
number-
judgment.
Q204, I believe.
Now, the sock stain, is your understanding that the sock stain that was examined was a cutting from the edge of a large stain on the sock?
Yes.
And what number was that given? Was that given?
I need to step away for like 10 minutes. Hopefully not that long, but maybe that long. I need to take care of something real quick. So if there's a sidebar in the next 10 minutes, go make yourself a sandwich.
Number Q206?
Yes, Q206.
Now, could we switch to slide P, please? Well, is your understanding that, well, there we go. On slide P, what's your understanding from the paperwork prepared by the FBI as to where Q206 came from on the sock?
Q206 was cut from the edge of a stain.
Could you look at the monitor? Does that appear to be a chart showing the approximate location of that cutting?
It's similar to what I had on a piece of paper, yes. It's a good representation.
And the green area is represented, that's a large cutout on the sock, correct?
Yes,
That was presumably already there. And Q206 was a cutting taken from the edge
yes.
of that larger cutting. Was there also a swatch submitted that had been taken from the large swatch that had been cut that was called Q207?
You mean that was taken from the swatch that didn't have the stain on it?
No, that was taken presumably from the large cutout piece and sent to the FBI along with the sock. Are you aware of that?
The 207?
Yes.
I don't think so. I don't see it in my papers here, the Q207. It may be. I would have to look through the pile. It's a big pile and it wasn't submitted in a good order, so I'd have to look through the whole thing. But I don't recall it.
Let me ask you this. Did you see any testing done using the method that we've described, looking for the 293 parent iron, the 160 daughter iron, on any sock stain other than Q206?
No.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our mid-morning recess at this time. Please remember all my admonitions to you. We'll stand in recess for about 15 minutes. Dr. Readers, you can step down. Come back in 15 minutes, please.
Thank you.
Bye. All right, the record to reflect that we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel, that Dr. Frederick Readers is on the witness stand undergoing direct examination by Mr. Blazier. And Mr. Blazier, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Readers, what is a chromatogram?
A chromatogram is a depiction of what at various times is seen by a detector looking at the end of the column where in this case, the liquid comes out, and where the liquid itself does not elicit a signal from the detector, but anything that comes out that is not the moving liquid, that is not the airstream, that is one of the people, anything that's one of the people walking down the road a mile comes out, the detector shows its presence and some measure of how much of it, how many molecules, or how large an amount, not concentration, but how large an amount is passing in front of the detector. And depicts that by a peak along a line, and every time something comes out, there's another peak, if it is seen by the detector.
I have marked as a group exhibit 2 diagrams, 2 chromatograms,
1259.
1259A and B. For the record, 1259A has DA discovery number 4088 and is a chromatogram on sample Q206. 1259B is DA discovery number 4094 and is also a chromatogram of Q206.
Right, Q206. Thank you.
Doctor, let me show you 1259A and B. Can you tell me if those are chromatograms?
Yes.
Now, I'd like to, we'd scan those as well. Could we have 4088?
Sir?
We're going to show you something on the monitor, Doctor. Doctor, could you look at the monitor and compare what's up there with 4088 that you have in your hand, and other than one being a positive and one being a negative, do they appear to be the same?
Looks like it is, that what's on the monitor is from that same chromatogram.
Now, that is a chromatogram produced by the FBI on the sock stain, correct? The Q206?
That is correct.
Now, I want to ask you about just a couple of things on this form. I'm going to zoom in a little bit up in this corner. Try to here, anyway. What does the 160 up in that corner there where the arrow is indicate?
$160, where's that, in the upper right corner?
The upper left.
Upper left, I'm sorry. I see on the chromatogram itself. It means that what is being monitored by the detecting device is the daughter ion 160 that has been isolated in the second mass spectrometer and filtered and isolated from the other ions, and is now impacting on the detector as the liquid is flowing out of the column, being transformed into the electrospray, entering the first mass spectrometer, and going into the next one where it's converted into a daughter ion. So that means that is the ion that's being monitored.
Now, what does that tell you about whether the parent ion, what does that tell you about the 293 parent ion?
Well, that in and of itself only tells me that one of the daughter ions of whatever it was that went into the second mass spectrometer, and which was the 293 daughter ion, broke up and gave off one piece, that's the 160.
So we know that this had to have come from the 293 parent ion.
Yes.
Now, let me blow up a little bit where this peak in the chart is. Can you tell me what the number 37 means?
The number 37 is you see a line on the bottom? What it does, it counts the number of the scans that go on. This is scan number 37, that the detector scans the gas that's coming past. And on the 37th pass, it has this particular peak. So that's the retention time of the substance in terms of number of scans rather than minutes. But it's the same thing. It's along a movement axis. The liquid flows past, and the earliest things are on the right, and the current, the latest things on the left.
Now, the other two numbers right below the 37, what do those mean?
The first of these is the detector took in the signals that it got, and it added them all up, and it measured how high a peak was generated from it in counting units. And the height of that peak was 24,223 counting units. The next line, what it does, it makes measurements of all the points in that peak that it can, and gives you an area of that peak. Because as you can see, that peak has a height and it has an area. You can see it right on there. And the area is 98,443 counts. In short, the area in counts is it takes roughly four times as many counts to cover the area than to cover the height.
Now, does the size of the peak, let me withdraw that. How does the machine know where to draw a triangle? Does that depend on what the operator tells it to do?
Well, it can be that the operator says, I want you to count everything that's between a certain space, or it can be termed to select that pick 2 points that are on a line of where this substance is coming through, because, you know, walking past the detector, you don't move past it instantly, nor do all the molecules, but first a few appear, then more and more and more, and then less and less and less, so you get this kind of a peak. It's the appearance, the presence, and the disappearance that is shown. So you can program how wide a base you want, or you can program, draw a line from a point of a certain height. You see on the left the counts are 50, 100, up to where the M over Z 160 is. There are these count numbers. And so these are height numbers, really, in a sense. So it says draw anything that has a height less than what some of the noise might be to the next point where you have that same. So you can do it in a variety of ways, but the instrument is instructed over what range to draw the line and the peak.
Now, let me blow up the top part of the chart where it says masses 158 to 162. What does that tell you?
That means that the eye of the mass spectrometer, the way that it is counting is that it'll count anything that comes past it that has a 158 or a 159 or a 160 or a 161 or a 162 M over Z. If it's a high resolution instrument, then it would start counting 158.1, 158.2, etc. But ordinarily it just counts these unit masses, so that anything in that range is seen by it. And this way you can actually get peaks in various places. In some places, in some retention times, there may be some things that have a moderate amount of more of 159, in others 160, but that is all within the mass range in which the daughter ion sits right in the middle.
Now, if you set the machinery to just look at the 160 rather than a range from 158 to 162, are you likely to have a higher peak?
Yeah, because it can, I told you, it depends, the number that it gets will depend on how rapidly it's checking off. You know, I see one, I see one, I see one. If it's slow, then it's got 2 or 3 that it sees at the same time, and you get a lower number of counts. If you focus just on the 160, then that same counts per minute is counting just 60s. Right now, it's counting anything between 158 and 162. And so if they're stuck together, it just becomes one count rather than separate counts.
Is it the same kind of thing that you might have if I was taking a picture of you with a video camera? If I was scanning it from the judge over to the bailiff, back and forth like this, you're going to be on the screen less time than if I just put it right on you.
Right. And so if you needed to sum all those pictures that were taken of me, you'd have fewer pictures if it's scanned than if it just sat right on me during that time.
And if you do an even broader scan, the peak would be equivalently less, is that correct?
Less and less, yes.
And you might not even see it at some point.
Yes.
This will be 1257Q. Doctor, could you take a look and tell me if the two charts that are on the screen now are the same as the two that I handed to you, 4088 and 4094?
Yes, they are what appears to be an accurate reproduction of what I have in front of me.
And are those two different tests that the FBI ran on Q206, the sock stain?
There are two separate tests, it looks like, on the stain.
Can we go to R? Now, Doctor, I've highlighted the peaks on those two charts. Does the chart up on the screen there correlate to the peaks that appear on those two chromatograms?
Yes.
Now, is the retention time on those two charts consistent with the retention time that the FBI determined you would have with EDTA?
Yes.
And do both of those charts demonstrate not only the presence of the 293 parent ion, but the 160 daughter ion?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion as to whether, based on those chromatograms from the FBI, whether the presence of EDTA has been demonstrated on the bloodstain from the sock, Q206?
Just on the basis of the 160 or the entire picture?
The entire picture.
On the basis of the entire picture, this has been, at these concentrations, presented as strongly as it can with present technology.
As what?
As EDTA.
Now, EDTA is what's called an organic compound, correct?
Yes, it has carbon in it, therefore it's organic.
And anything that has carbon in it is called an organic compound?
Yes.
And do we know how many there are in the universe? Organic compounds?
Well, no, we don't know how many organic compounds there are in the universe. Obviously not, because we are discovering new ones, we are making new ones, but we're also discovering new ones every day.
Is it possible that there might be some other substance in the universe that gave the same pattern as we see here as EDTA?
Well, of course, there might be anything in the universe. We don't know all the things that are in the universe, so of course there could be.
Do you know of any specific compound other than EDTA that has the 293 parent ion, the 160 daughter ion, the appropriate retention time, and the other characteristics that you described about solubility, other than EDTA?
Well, as far as retention time is concerned, I have not seen any chromatography. This is the first time that it was done under these conditions, so I can't relate it. There's no internal standard, so I can't assign a relative amount to it. But as far as the parent ion, the estimated retention time, that means under the conditions that they use a short retention substance, relatively short retention substance, a parent ion of 293 and a daughter ion of 160, I don't know of any such substance, and I have not been able to find any in the search of the Merck index of substances. So I've looked and I haven't found any.
I have another document marked actually C of that last series because it goes together. Could be 1259C.
All right.
Doctor, take a look at this first, then we'll put it on the Elmo. Does this appear to be what's called a full daughter ion scan chromatogram for Q206?
Yes, it scans all the masses from 130, which I think is one of the lowest daughter ions of the 293 ion, all the way up to 295, which is the molecular ion plus 3.
Now, can I take it that what this is, it's looking for the other pieces in addition to the 160?
That is correct.
Can you put this on the Elmo, please? Doctor, could you look up at the top right-hand corner and tell us what range was being scanned with that chromatogram?
From mass 130, which is one of the breakup pieces of the parent ion. When that breaks up, it gives rise to 130, among others, all the way up to 295, which, as I said, is a piece larger than the molecule.
Now, is using my analogy of a television camera, are we talking about a very long range of scan?
Yes.
So is it fair to say that any particular point that's being looked at is not being looked at very frequently because of the broad range of the scan?
Yes.
Now, in this particular one, there are no peaks or triangles identified, correct?
Well, they are not identified by being drawn as triangles or numbered. That's correct.
Do you see any things on there that could be potential indications of the presence of these ions at around the right retention time?
Yes, indeed. We have, within the same range within which we determined before a countable picture, because it was more focused, remember in the previous one, we do have the highest peaks in that chromatogram fall into the same retention time range for all of the ions as they did for the ones that were clearly recognized as being 160 ions because of the focus on them.
Now, I'm pointing my pen to the top one, which is the 132 daughter ion. Is this what you're talking about? Is the peak right in here? Right there?
Yes, except that the way that this, in the electrospray, you get movement, you don't get that clear a definition, that there are several points in here which you would find with the 160 daughter ions.
And now the 160 chart right below that, is that what you're talking about there, that peak that
Right.
is a possible indication of the
Yes.
presence of that? Now, you will acknowledge, will you not, that these peaks aren't nearly as well defined as the ones we've looked at before, correct?
Yes, of course, they are much smaller. The area is smaller and the peak is smaller because all of the energy for count-in is spread over the range of 130 to
295?
to 295, whereas in the other one, it is concentrated. All the energy of counting is to individually count each 160 fragment along with the other ones close next to it.
Does this mean that the EDTA that you saw in the earlier two charts has somehow disappeared?
No, it's you have a less sensitive method. So the same amount of EDTA will show up as a peak that is not as tall and that doesn't have as much of an area. It looks fuzzier. It's looking at it through a somewhat darker glass than you looked at the 160. But you get more information in return.
I have two other charts. Could we have these marked as next in order A and B?
Is this 1260? 1260.
1260 A and B?
Yes.
And for the record, 1260A has DA discovery number 4084 and is a chromatogram from a testing from Q204, the stain from the back gate. And 1260B is DA discovery number 4049, is a second test on the same stain from a different day. Dr. Readers, let me show you 1260A and 1260B. Does this appear to be two chromatograms from two different tests on two different days of the stain from the back gate in Nicole Brown Simpson's condominium?
Well, I can't see the dates. They are different times, but the date is not apparent.
Now,
Is that what you have on the side? 222 and 228, is that the date?
yes.
Yes.
Incidentally, when you were provided with the materials from the FBI the first time, were you able to tell what dates the tests were done on?
On these papers?
Yes.
No.
And why was that?
They weren't shown. They were cut off or they weren't shown.
Were they in the order in which the test had been run?
No.
Were they somewhat mixed up?
Yes.
Could we have 17Q? I'm sorry, 1257Q. Let me show you what's 1257S. Does this appear to be an accurate depiction of both the chromatograms 4049, 4084, two tests on the back gate stain on 2 different days?
Yes.
Next slide, please. Doctor, do the peaks shown on those 2 chromatograms have a retention time consistent with the presence of EDTA?
Yes, they do. They have the same retention time range. They have a retention time well within the range shown by EDTA.
And do they also demonstrate the presence of both the 293 parent ion and the 160 daughter ion?
Yes, because without the
I'm sorry.
293, you can't get the 160.
He's still talking?
MS in the MS.
I love oatmeal too. Hi,
Do you have an
Michael.
opinion on whether, based on those chromatograms, there is
Mike
EDTA
goes
present
here.
in the stain from the back gate?
In my opinion, yes. It demonstrates that there is EDTA present
Oops.
in that
I got
stain.
text messages.
Now, what are negative controls?
Negative controls are samples put through the same procedure as your sample at issue, and samples which are known not to contain any added substance that you're looking for. And if run at appropriate sensitivity, they are negative controls because by the method used, they will give a negative test result if A, there is in fact no more, or if there isn't any there, and B, that the method that has been applied has worked as well there.
Did Agent Martz of the FBI test an area of the sock that did not have any apparent blood on it?
Yes,
Is
that's
that-
what he states he did.
Is that what's meant by negative control?
I believe so, that's what he meant.
Were any
Did that
knives
indicate
found
the
in that?
presence of EDTA?
Oh, sorry.
No, it did not.
And what does that tell you about the blood stain?
Well, that means, since it is my opinion that the blood stain contained EDTA, that came from the blood and not from the sock.
Does that rule out any contribution from laundry detergent or something else that might be throughout the entire sock?
Reasonably certainly, yes, unless, of course, the blood was dotted with laundry detergent, and nothing else on the sock was.
Now, as to the back gate, did Agent Martz run any negative controls on the back gate?
Yes,
And were those from a swatch taken
I'm
from
gonna
an area
drink that
away from
too.
blood, but no blood on it?
yes.
And how many of those negative controls did he run?
I recall 4.
And what was the results of his testing on those 4?
3 were negative and 1 was positive.
When
That
you
sounds
get
like a
mixture
superhero.
like that, what's the interpretation?
Well, the interpretation is that you better run 4 more or do something like that because you have something there which doesn't make sense.
But the fact that you have 3 negative controls coming back negative, what does that indicate?
Well, if you want to put it on a majority basis, that there's a 75% probability that it's truly negative and that the 4th one is something that happened, either contamination or an
That's what
accident
they
or-
need,
no,
Michael. They need a wrestler that has an electro spray. And all he does is, and then people fly backwards. I'm not saying wrestling is fake, but that's what they need.
Something happened to that sample, or that got mixed up. I can't tell you what, obviously, but
Does the fact that 3 of the negative controls are negative indicate that there was no EDTA on the control swatch taken from the gate but not from the blood?
oh yes, it does.
Now, were you asked to consider the question of whether the FBI's methods were capable of reliably determining the amount of EDTA that the test detected to any degree of analytical certainty or accuracy?
The amount, no, I really don't think that it is capable of doing a reasonably acceptable quantitative analysis job at all, which is inherent not in what the FBI did, but in the electrospray method.
Were you asked to determine whether the FBI methods were capable of reliably determining concentrations of EDTA in the evidence samples?
No way. And not only because of what I said before, but in order to do concentrations, you'd really have to know how much sample was in that swatch that you analyzed, how much got wiped off there, how much blood was in there that you have. And there's no way that you can really tell that from the tests that were done.
Now, again, by concentrations, we're talking about parts per million
Or
or...
parts per billion or whatever, yeah.
Was the FBI's testing methodology capable of determining parts per billion, in your opinion?
Well, no, it was not. Not at all.
Now, with the technique that the FBI used, we had talked previously about ion count, in other words, how high the peak is. You recall that?
Yes.
With this testing methodology, when they don't use an internal
Variation between two runs, each on a 50 parts per million known sample.
And did you examine, did Agent March run several
My
known
God.
EDTA
Bobby,
standards? 50
Bobby, that would be so funny. I would not be able to handle it.
parts per million to see what kind of peak heights he got?
Yes, of course.
And was there a lot of variation in those peak heights?
Yes, sevenfold.
And does that indicate anything to you as to whether you can use peak height to accurately determine concentration?
Not individual peak heights, no.
Now, let's say if you wanted to use this method as a way of quantifying how much EDTA you found, what would be the appropriate procedure?
You could do it if you used a internal standard that I'd mentioned
It's
before,
stapled
where
in
the
the back.
ratio of the area of the peak heights is constant at a given concentration, and where the two behave in a very, very similar manner.
Now, with an internal standard, is that a substance that's very close to the EDTA but enough different so that you can tell the difference?
That's the ideal, that you can tell the difference, but that otherwise the behavior is not significantly different. The properties
I wish he would
are
have
sufficiently
a
different. so you
tiny
can
bit of
separate
color
them
on his tire. He
either
is
with the
completely
liquid
gray.
chromatograph or with a mass spectrometer.
Gray.
And are those kinds of compounds available commercially?
Yes, sure.
Now, when you would use an internal standard, do you actually put the internal standard with the evidence that you're testing, or do you do it in a different run?
No, you do it right in the sample. The ideal thing is to, if you have a swatch like he had, is to put the internal standard on the swatch, known amount, and then extract it. Really, put it on the swatch, let it dry, let it age a while because you didn't just prepare it. It's been around a while, and then extract it. You know how much you should find from that. Now, of course, you run also controls where you just put neatly the internal standard into the machine and see the amount that I'm going to put on the swatch would show up if I get 100% of it back at a certain height in a certain area. And then I put it on the swatch, then I put it in the water, and so that eventually you end up with a chromatogram like this with two peaks, close to each other but far enough apart so that you can tell one from the other.
And does that allow you, since you know how much of the internal standard you put in there, does that allow you to then quantify how much was in the evidence?
Yes, by taking the ratio of the, let's say, the height of the known over the height of the unknown or vice versa, and comparing that with the standard, because that ratio is going to be reasonably constant.
Did Agent March use an internal standard in his testing?
No.
Is using an internal standard very common practice when running mass spec tests?
It is a standard procedure wherever you have one available.
That won't work with me today. Nope, it will not work. You guys can talk about food all you want, but I am starving, but I am not eating a thing because today's the day. Ugh. My job is usually closed on Mondays, but they're opening today for us to have like a team building day. Yep. We're all going in to become better team members with each other. Yep. Oh my gosh. I can't stand it. I cannot stand it. However, they are providing snacks. So I'm in. Let's go. Bring me there. I'm getting snacks in a couple hours.
Not only for quantitation,
I'll
but
show you
also
pictures
for
and discard.
retention time characterization. If one moves to a different retention time, so does the other. So again, that relative retention time is kept much tighter that way. It's almost become a requirement of chromatography, in quotes, of course.
Now, let's assume hypothetically that the stain from the back gate was put there using blood from a reference tube that had EDTA in it. And let's assume also hypothetically that the stain in the sock was placed there using blood with EDTA in it. Were you asked to consider the question of how much EDTA you would expect to find if you then tested those blood stains 8 months later?
Yes, I was asked.
Now, is it important when you're running a sample, if you want to determine how much of something like EDTA is present, that you know how much you start with?
How much sample you start with?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Now, if you had a blood swatch, let's say from the back gate or a piece of the sock, from the sock that appeared to have blood in it. Can you tell how much blood is there by just looking at it?
I can't.
What are the standard procedures used to determine the quantity of blood that might be in a swatch?
Well, you bring it into a water solution, preferably with a little ammonia because old stains are hard to get out. And you read that in a spectrophotometer for the hemoglobin content or for the hematin content, which is a fairly selective method, or else for the Sorey band absorbing proteins, as you call them. That's one way. It's a simple way because you don't do anything to the sample. You can handle it afterwards, do anything you want to with it. You just put it in a light spectrophotometer and you get the spectrum, and at a certain wavelength against standards you determine how much hemoglobin is, which is what really the blood has most of, or if you're dealing with serum or plasma, how much protein based on the Sorey band, which is also an absorption in the ultraviolet region. There is.
Are there any
there are other ways of doing it. I mean, you know more about this probably than I do because you've been so well educated in this. You can determine the amount of DNA in it, and that tells you how much blood there was, because blood has a fairly known amount of DNA in it. You can also determine other substances in there that are characteristic of blood. For instance, if your background material doesn't have any iron in it, the measurement of iron in a sample like this is a good measure of hemoglobin, because most of the iron in blood comes from hemoglobin. Now again, assuming that this is blood, not serum or plasma, what I usually do is spectrophotometry and or iron determination and or copper and zinc. If the background, if I have a sample that's diluted blood and I want to know how diluted it is or how much there is. So you can do it. I mean,
And is that equipment that you would expect to find in any well-equipped lab?
Oh, I'm sure that's available. It's
You know where the FBI has that kind of equipment?
Well, I don't know what their lab has, but if they've got a instrument they have, I'm sure they couldn't do without the others.
Did you see anything in Agent Martz's work papers indicating that he used any method other than just looking at a stain to determine how much blood he started with from the evidence?
Well, I only saw in his papers here he made stain sizes on a cloth and said when I put a drop on I get so much stain, and when I put on another one I
Go get her.
Such an area.
Go get her, Zach.
The area that I have comprises a fraction of that, which I don't think is a workable way of doing it unless you do it to exactly the same material, do it many, many times, do averages, standard deviations, and other things. So, because what he had wasn't a drop of blood placed on the kind of material he was testing on, anything for that matter, but in the case of the gate, it's something that got wiped off a gate.
Now, did you evaluate or look at the method that he used to attempt to extract the blood that was in the evidence, the sock stain and the bag gate swatch, to extract the blood from that?
Yes, I looked at it.
And what was that method briefly?
Essentially, he took what he had, what was available, a portion of it, and he put it into 25 microliters of water. And
Sustained.
Let me ask you
The answer is stricken. Juries to disregard the answer.
Let me ask you hypothetically, if you took, let's say, first of all, an old stain that had been on a swatch for 8 months and put it in water, plain water, let's say 25 microliters, and let it soak for 45 minutes and centrifuged it, is that an efficient way to remove all of the blood from the stain?
Oral.
it's a way, but you won't get 100%. You'll get a relatively low recovery from an old stain. A dried stain where it's dried for all that period of time is bone dry. It won't all dissolve in the water, much less than all, just a small portion.
What's
or
the
just a portion.
What would be an acceptable technique?
It for an hour, you shake it for an hour, you centrifuge it, you take it out, put it in another 25 microliters, and every time you run some kind of a non-destructive test to see are you still getting blood out, until you don't see any more coming out. Then you are pretty sure you've gotten it all out. You can enhance that by using, for instance, dilute ammonia, which is a better solvent for dried blood than plain water. But it too, you have to establish that this will all come out by doing sequential extractions and measuring in each one the amount of the sample blood that's in it, in one way or another.
Would you agree that if you were testing an old blood stain to determine how much EDTA was present and you did not extract all of the blood from the stain, you're going to find a smaller amount of EDTA than might actually be there?
Well, that
Sustained.
If you don't, I'm sorry.
Raise the question.
If you don't remove all of the blood from the evidence swatch, are you going to, and the blood has EDTA in it, are you going to find less EDTA than is in the whole stain?
Or will-
Of course, I mean, that's very self-evident. If you don't get it all, you have less than if you get it all, whatever it is.
Now, incidentally, are you aware of any other case or any published literature on the issue of determining levels of EDTA in blood stains in forensic cases?
No, I'm not. I don't think there's anything published. I've asked around. I don't know of anyone who's done it.
Would you say that this is brand new ground in terms of that particular test I told you about?
Yes, sure. For EDTA in a blood swatch of this type, it's brand new ground. EDTA has been determined in blood, but not in a blood swatch, in a forensic case, et cetera, to any published extent or anywhere I know.
Now, the chromatography and the mass spec techniques, those are all techniques that have been around for a long time, haven't they?
Yes, they've been, the mass spectrometry and chromatography is fairly old.
Differences between extracting blood from an old stain versus a new stain?
No, I did not.
By the way, if you have a swatch that's made from a blood stain, for instance, on a back gate, can you tell from looking at that swatch how much blood is in it?
I can't, no.
Can that vary from one swatch to the next?
I'm sure it will, greatly.
There's no way the jury's listening. They might have listened for a few minutes, but there's no way. No human can. I bet you
Now,
Bill can't
In
even.
the context of the testing
Bill,
done
you
by
here?
the FBI, what is a positive control?
The positive control in that context, as in any other context, is one to which the substance at issue has been added in a known quantity, and preferably not only in a known quantity, but to a known concentration. That means a situation where you know how much sample you have and how much you're adding. That's concentration. If you don't know how much sample you have and you put on it a microgram, then you know you've put 1 microgram in, but you don't know what the concentration is because you don't know 1 microgram per what.
Hypothetically, if you had a blood stain on a metal gate that was not collected, in other words, was out in the outside environment, subject to the weather and other environmental factors, for a period of from a day to 2 or 3 weeks, what effect would those conditions have on the presence of EDTA in the blood? Assuming that the original stain had been
You put a
EDTA
wet stain on and you let it sit there dry and be exposed for a day or more
with EDTA blood, yes.
with EDTA blood. There would be some degradation from environmental factors. How much should really be determined experimentally, but I'm reasonably sure there would be because it's been done.
Sustained. Answer stricken.
Have you reviewed literature on a study that determined what's called the photodegradation of EDTA?
Yes.
And what did that article tell you?
Well, basically that article tells you that if you have EDTA in solution, in this case the EDTA in a German river called the Neckar, Neckar, and if you sample that with EDTA in it on a sunny day in Germany, that the amount of EDTA that's in that solution is going to break down, half of it's going to break down in less than 10 minutes from the sunshine itself. So that's photodegradation. It's because of the energy of the sun rays interacting with the EDTA in the water. The material that was used for that was iron. It was an iron chelate of EDTA. So-called biotic by living organisms, and abiotic by the presence of oxygen and absence of oxygen. So it's known it degrades. If you take a sample of EDTA in blood and freeze it, it'll stay there.
Sustained. Proceed.
If you were trying to determine how much the EDTA you would have in an EDTA blood stain that had been subjected to 1 day to 2 or 3 weeks outside environment on a particular type of metal fence, how would you determine that?
Well, I've done things like this, and in this case it's obvious. You get a material which is as alike as possible to the metal fence, maybe a piece of the metal fence, and you put 10 dots of EDTA blood on it, and you put on it 10 dots of blood in other places of blood that doesn't have any EDTA in it. That's not in an EDTA tube, but it's normal human blood, which normally contains virtually no EDTA. Then what you do is you analyze a control, or more than one control. It means you take a little bit of an area where there's no blood, and you take that and try to know how much you have and analyze it. Then you wash off one of the spots that has EDTA, another spot that doesn't have EDTA. You analyze all three. And you repeat that every day for a week or something like that, for a portion of the time. If it's just for a few hours,
I
that
wonder
you're
how much he's
interested in,
getting
then you
paid
repeat
for
it
this
during
testimony,
a period
really.
of several hours. You analyze it and you see whether it's broken down. You know, whether the one that was put there an hour ago has less in it than the one that you took off right away and analyzed.
I don't know if they asked, was a bunch of EDTA found in the sock and in the fence? Did anybody say that there was yet? It's hard for me to pay attention.
Or the one that you took, was there for a week. And if during that whole period there's no breakdown, then you say, well, I don't know whether it would break down in 8 months, like, or 8 weeks or whatever, but at least I know that during that period it's stable. Usually in a substance, my experience is that substance that does break down, within a week you'll be able to tell that it does. Then carefully you can extrapolate, say that in 8 months there's going to be nothing there, or I think there may be some there, but that then becomes somewhat speculative.
Now, is that what you've described as possible methods to determine that? Is that part of what should be a validation study on the method?
Well, that's what I would call a validation of the method,
you
for
see-
this purpose.
Did you see anything in the paperwork from the FBI indicating that they did any test at all to determine how much EDTA would have been lost under the conditions that we described?
No, I did not.
Now, let me ask you about the sock. Let's assume hypothetically that EDTA blood was put on the sock at some point in time. And let's assume further that between the time that blood was put on there and the time it was analyzed by the FBI, it was examined several times using high-intensity lights involving physical manipulation in the process of examining it. Can you tell us whether or not that would result in the degradation of the EDTA that was originally in that blood?
Objection is not hypothetical, so that is not included.
Anything else?
I'm calling for speculation outside the expertise.
Sustain.
Doctor, is photodegradation, does that work when you shine a light on something?
That's what photodegradation is, from light energy.
And the one study that you cited looked at photodegradation and found that it can occur with EDTA, correct?
Objection is irrelevant.
What form of EDTA is used in the
Bye,
profile?
Maiko. Love you.
Well, actually, well, you want me to answer?
Yes, I'd like to know.
It can be there in several forms: iron EDTA, calcium EDTA, several others.
What was used here?
I don't know. I mean, it picks up iron, is what it does.
I understand that. But the one article you have talks about the water quality in the Neckar Valley River. A delightful place, that's why the Germans call it the romantic highway, but it doesn't tell me a lot about this case.
Let me ask a different question.
All right, let me approach with a sidebar with Corporal, please.
What is he yelling at him about now?
There was that study of water soluble EDTA is really relatable to EDTA in blood that is already bonded with the calcium elements.
Actually, Agent Martz's first series of tests that he did were looking for iron EDTA, and he found substantial, enough to measure, certainly. So it's there in the presence of the reference bloods. My only point about this particular article is, it's no question it's a limited article, limited circumstances. I'm not going to use this to have him express an opinion on how much degradation there would be with the sock, for instance. What I'm going to elicit from him is that in order to make the determination of what you might lose from the sock, you need to do testing on conditions similar to the sock, that you would not rely on this study to make an assessment as to whether you're going to lose any EDTA from the sock.
But aren't you asking the jurors to form an opinion by then bringing out the exposure to the infrared light and the microscope and high-intensity lights?
I'm going to bring out the fact that those are things that conceivably could result in some loss of EDTA, and they were never, that was never checked. And that's another way of showing that the testing that was done here is not adequate to show you how much you should have there.
But if we only have one study that tests photodegradation in water, in river water, as nice a river as it is, it's not really relatable to blood.
Well, it's iron EDTA, which is we know is present in this blood. It was in solution at some time. It photodegrades. I mean, that's the only information we have is that EDTA photodegrades under certain conditions. We don't have any studies that say it doesn't under other conditions. Our position is that this is something that would have been part of a validation study had it
I
been
think
done.
it's clearly enough for a scientist to be curious. But to say that EDTA under these conditions in blood photodegrades,
Oh, no, I don't intend to have, I intend to have him say exactly what you just said, that this is something that should have been checked.
I heard it a little more conclusory than that.
Oh, well, I'll clean that up.
All right, well, I want you to know I'm concerned.
No, I understand that. I'll do that first thing.
All right. Ms. Clark?
Yeah, the problem that I have is that the manner in which the question and answer has been going is that the deliberate impression is being left that EDTA will degrade. Not only is that not...
Photodegrade. Photodegrade. Photodegrade.
Photodegrade, correct. I'm sorry, will photodegrade. And the problem with that is that it is not proven to be the case at all. And the testimony runs contrary to what we know about the stability of EDTA as a compound. And in the absence of this doctor having some experiment or expertise in that determination, then that's not shown. So instead of just bringing out the fact that, and I think it's improper to cause the jury to speculate on that as well, there is no known literature or experimentation to document whether EDTA, especially in a dried stain, will photodegrade. And to cause the jury to speculate on that possibility when there's no showing of that, I mean, let's not forget something here. There's no proof that the blood was planted, period. And this is an effort by the defense, on the defensive, to take evidence of the fact that there was no planting, make it so confusing that the jury's going to go off the deep end trying to figure out what it is, and hopefully from their side, conclude that there was. I mean, that's really the bottom line here, because we have a premise, and it's never been shown, and it can never be shown, because it's not true. That's the biggest problem I have. But then, okay, if they want to do this, that's fine. But then to deliberately confuse and mislead the jury to make them believe that there could have been more EDTA there, which degraded because of the exposure to sunlight, it is going way off the deep end of speculation, and that impression has definitely been left. And for Mr. Glazer to go any farther with this, asking the doctor about experiments
So,
concerning that.
Ms. Clark, I take it the bottom line of what you're trying to say is you're making a 352 objection
Yes, Your Honor.
based upon the lack of a scientific basis for photodegradation of EDTA in blood.
Yes, Your Honor. And just alluding to the fact that there is none creates the impression with the jury. You know what I mean?
Mr. Blazer, I really think her objection's well taken. I mean, that's why I jumped in there to ask the question, because I don't see the foundation to talk about this.
Well, again, I'm going to point out exactly what you said. My point is that the fact that there isn't any literature under these conditions shows that they never tested for that, so they can't say whether it would have degraded out or not. That's a deficiency in their experimentation where they tried to make some sort of quantification. It's not a valid quantification. That's one of the reasons why, because they never tried to simulate the conditions that we have in this case. That's certainly a valid point, I would assume.
That point is addressed by the fact that we have results on the socks. The results on the socks and on the gate, number one, do not give the full daughter spectrum. So to even call it EDTA is going out on a limb. But
Do we have any way to compare the results sock to the gate?
yes,
And what's the relative comparison?
the
sorry,
gate's a little higher than the sock. But they're both dramatically lower, like by a magnitude of 100 times below the preserved level. But yes, that's right, the result does not support the defense contention of photodegradation.
Okay. I don't know how she can say that. They didn't test for that.
All right.
Assuming that what the defense wants to say is true, that there is such a thing as photodegradation, the gate should then be lower than the sock. If the sock was not out in the sunlight for nearly as long,
Now, the gate is a completely different set of circumstances, which also should have been tested for and weren't. It's on metal, it's outside, it's subject to dust, to fertilizer, to other things. They can also chelate with EDTA. They're different circumstances, and the levels of ionization that we're talking about, you can't quantify. Their 50 parts per million test on the same run has a 7-fold difference from one run to the next. I mean, you cannot use these ion counts as a way to say there's 5 parts per million versus 6.
No,
It's
we're
just
talking
not.
about the basis of a doctor giving opinions regarding photodegradation of EDTA. That's what we're talking about. I find it's not sufficient. I'll sustain the objection. All right, let's have the jury
Well,
case.
may I point of clarification? May I ask him about the lack of any literature on photodegradation?
You can ask him if there's anything in the literature about that,
Okay.
other than this one article that we've already talked about.
Okay.
that's always been done, hasn't it, Your Honor?
It has.
In that case, it would be asked and answered. And counsel's just trying to highlight the very point that the court has ruled briefly too.
That's true. It's already in the record. So we'll proceed.
Stand, Your Honor. Or-
Yes, please. Doctor. All right.
Dr. Reeders, I think we were talking at the break about environmental conditions with respect to the gate. Let me ask you if, and you described one way that you would do some testing to determine what effect that might have on the amount of EDTA that you started with versus what comes off the stain taken several days or weeks later. You recall that?
Yes, I recall.
To answer that question properly,
Would you pull the microphone close to you there, please? Thank you.
confronted with that set of circumstances, to answer the question, mainly how much EDTA might you lose under those
Sustained.
Did you see any evidence that the FBI did any studies whatsoever to determine what would be the difference in the amount of EDTA in a stain put on a gate with EDTA blood
Overruled.
subjected to whatever environmental conditions it was subjected to and then collected from a day to 3 weeks later? Did you see?
Since that's not necessarily ever be.
Overruled.
No, I did not see anything along those lines.
Now, let me ask you hypothetically about the sock. Did you see any indication in the FBI reports that you were given indicating that any testing was done to determine what, if any, loss you might have in EDTA if you put EDTA blood on the sock at one point in time, subjected to changes in temperature, inspection under various different kinds of lighting, and multiple handling to determine how much EDTA might be left at the end of all that process?
No, I did not see.
Overruled.
If you were doing a validation study to determine that question, well, let me ask you this. If you were trying to make some sort of assessment on the quantity of EDTA that you would expect at the end of that process when you do the testing, would you do those kinds of studies to answer those questions?
Yes.
Would you just assume that it's not going to make any difference? And
Sustained.
did you see anything in the FBI reports indicating whether they did any studies whatsoever to determine whether there might be any oxygen or bacterial degradation of EDTA?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Objection. No foundation.
Overruled.
No.
Did you see anything in the FBI paperwork indicating that they looked at the question of what might happen to the amount of EDTA in a stain if some EDTA blood was mixed in with some non-EDTA blood?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Now, you reviewed charts that the FBI produced of their positive controls for EDTA, correct?
Yes.
And what's your understanding of how those positive controls were made?
The positive controls were made by taking the material, for example, on a swatch, or just taking plain blood and adding to it EDTA, or taking known EDTA blood and see how it behaves.
Did you
But
see
it was all fresh blood.
Did you see any indication of how long they waited from the time they put the blood on a stain until they actually tested it?
No.
Would that be significant? Would that be important to you?
Only if it were to exceed a normal laboratory period. You know, you start something, you continue that day or next day. If it was any length of time, yes.
And if you were trying to simulate what you might expect to find under the conditions which we have with the sock and the back gate, in your opinion, would it be adequate to just take a blood stain that's dried for a period of an hour, let's say, and testing it right then?
It does not at all reproduce the conditions of the specimen, so to that extent it is not.
Now, Doctor, the charts produced for the positive controls had relatively large peaks, did they not?
Yes.
And I'd like to have a chart mark, please.
1261.
I'm sorry,
1261.
1261. Let me show you what's been marked as 1261. Did you receive a bar chart like that in the material from the FBI?
Yes.
And let me put that on the Elmo. Now, doctor, does this appear to be a bar chart produced in the FBI paperwork? Can you see it?
I'm trying to read the one next to the large number. Yes, I received that.
And the up and down axis, the left axis there is the ion count, correct?
Yes.
And the various different bars indicate EDT or what matches EDTA found from various samples, correct?
Yes.
Now, does that particular chart in representing ion counts, let me rephrase this. Did they run positive controls more than just those 2 times?
Yes.
Did they get large fluctuations in the ion count for different positive controls?
Yes.
Did they get different ion counts for their known standards as well?
Sustain.
Let me have 2 other charts marked.
It's his examination counsel.
Let me ask you one question about the chart before we mark the next set. The 2 columns on the left indicate dress. You see that?
Yes.
And they indicate approximately the same amounts from a sample called K65 and K65C. Do you agree with that?
No, the one on the right is substantially thicker than the one on the left.
Are you talking about-
Number 2 is substantially thicker than number 1 as far as the height.
Number
You're
2
talking
is
about on the left.
definitely thicker than number 1. I'm
are you
not
aware
a
of,
doctor, and I know that.
That was Nicole Brown Simpson's dress.
Yes.
Do you know what substance that was made out of?
I think it's one of the artificial fibers that includes EDTA.
Does rayon include EDTA?
In the process, yes.
Let me have 2 other charts marked
1262 is next in order.
1262A and B. For the record, 1262A is discovery number 4077 and is labeled 50 parts per million EDTA. And 1262B is discovery page 4070, also indicated as 50 parts per million EDTA. And these are both from February 22nd, Council. Dr. Readers, let me show you 2 charts, 1262A and 1262B, and ask you if those appear to be charts testing 50 parts per million EDTA.
Yes.
And what are the times on those 2 charts in terms of when each sample was run?
One at 9:32 and 45 seconds in the morning, and the other one at 1:48 and 11 seconds in the afternoon of the same day.
Now, for the chart that has the number 4077, Your Honor, could we have slide B, 1257V? Doctor, could you tell us for chart number 4077, what was the ion count for 50 parts per million on that particular run?
For the area, is that what you want?
No, the peak height.
The peak height, 319,561.
Now, look at chart 4070, the same standard, the same amount, run later that day. What was the ion count later in the day?
49,393.
And would you agree that, assuming the chart is properly labeled, those 2 should be the same thing? Well, let me rephrase that. That the same thing is being tested in both of those runs.
Yes.
And do you find it unusual at all that the ion counts would change so much from one test to the next on the same day?
Sustain.
Doctor, do you interpret chromatograms all of the time?
Yes.
Do you
Yes.
look at peak heights and peak areas and retention times all the time?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion on whether ion counts under the conditions of the FBI's experiments can vary that much as shown in the chart, from run to run in the same day?
Foundation, see, scope and expertise.
Yes, I have an opinion.
What's your opinion?
Easily, because with the electrospray system, you get numbers that go pretty much all over.
Okay.
So
And-
that's consistent with electrospray analysis.
Now, is this if you ran an internal standard with each of those, if the equipment is working properly, what would you find?
Well, you'd find that the ratio would be the same if it's the same sample. Mind you, if it's a different sample, it could be, different blood, different thing. But if it's the same sample or the same batch for the analysis, then you would find the ratio is similar, provided everything went all right, even though the numbers are greatly different.
Now, have I asked you to take that off? Have you reviewed some material provided by Mr. Martz concerning the amounts of, well, let me rephrase this. Is EDTA appear or allowed to be present in food?
In food, yes.
What kinds of foods is it allowed to be in?
In some of the dried vegetable type things, like in peas and beans, according to the one FDA release that I have, in pickles, in a variety of foods. I don't recall any what you call basic foods that are eaten in huge amounts, like bread or something, but it might be, I don't know.
Have you reviewed the federal requirements in terms of the maximum amounts of EDTA that can be put into various foods?
I looked at them, yes.
And have you determined from those materials what you would expect to find in a person's natural blood who is eating materials with EDTA in them?
Objection. Yeah, let's go to the expertise.
Is that foundation?
Foundation.
Sustain.
Doctor, are you called upon to make calculations of how much of a particular substance might be in the bloodstream based on what you ingest by mouth?
If I have any idea what the absorption is, yes.
And is there a study that you reviewed in this case provided by Mr. Martz that talks about the absorption rate of EDTA into the system?
Yes.
And what study is that?
That is a study by Trujillo and, now the second name slips, in the 50s using radioactive labeled EDTA and fed to people.
And what did that study determine was the absorption rate of EDTA into the bloodstream when it was taken by mouth?
Objection, Your Honor, that study has no relevance to this.
Oh,
I need to approach to explain.
with the court reporter.
Judge, I'm with you every day for many hours, and you've never once invited me to your parties. Never once. Never. I don't even want to come now. I don't even care what you say over there. I don't even care if you're talking about Josh. Yes, you missed Mike-O. I always miss Mike-O.
All right, let me ask
I
the
miss
jury to
Michael
step back
right
to
now.
the jury, please.
Rut-row. Get out of here, jury. You're not invited to the party either. We're fine. It's gonna mop on in a second. I don't have to be at work until 1 p.m. So
All right, the record should reflect the jury.
we're gonna go 2 hours, like normal.
Mr. Blazer, tell me about this report.
Your Honor, we got discovery from the prosecution on Thursday of what the Code of Federal Regulations allows by way of EDTA in food. I asked Dr. Ballard, who is present in court, who's one of our experts, who is not on our witness list, to calculate for me how much would that result in terms of parts per million, per billion, whatever, if you ate the maximum dosage in one day and it was completely absorbed into your system and all sorts of other conditions which aren't terribly realistic.
Isn't yesterday a little late to be doing these calculations?
I was doing them over the weekend, Your Honor, and I provided them to Agent Martz. I tried to
Well,
fax...
wait. If EDTA in the blood is an issue from opening statements back in January, isn't this a little late to be doing this?
Agent Martz told me when I went to Washington last week that he had performed, a week before last, I guess it was, that he had performed some experiments on his own blood that showed the presence of EDTA. He also told me that he hadn't saved any of the data, that he had thrown it all away, that he had not produced the charts for us. I had to ask them for them, and he turned them over. So I assumed at that point that they were going to make some kind of an argument that maybe the EDTA in his blood is based on what he eats. And at that point, I decided to use their material and calculate what you would expect to find in your blood if you ate what you're allowed to eat in terms of EDTA.
Isn't that something that's pretty obvious as an avenue of inquiry?
Our experts had told us that you're never going to get above parts per billion from your diet. That, to me, that was never an issue. until he says that he tested his own blood and found something.
All right. Well, the point here, though, is that you're attempting to elicit testimony from Dr. Reeders concerning a report that was not turned over to the prosecution, correct?
It was a calculation that I attempted to turn over to the prosecution as soon as I had it. They didn't have their machine on yesterday. I gave it to Agent March last night. I told him, if you talk to Marcia, please give him this stuff because I couldn't get it through on their fax.
As far as I know, our fax machine is always on.
I've got the proof in my file if you want it.
I mean, it's the first I've heard of this calculation. I don't know. That's why I'm attempting to confer with Agent March now to figure out what they did.
Well, I must say that the issue, I mean, it does pique one's curiosity since we know that EDTA is allowed in certain foodstuffs. It does sort of pique your interest whether or not it's naturally occurring in the blood. I mean, that's an inquiry that, you know, either side should have made a long time ago. And
We know that all the literature tells us that if it's there, it's going to be in the parts per billion range. That's what the literature says. And we provided them with material from the Environmental Protection Agency that also says you shouldn't see more than 2 parts per billion in humans.
All right.
That was
Now,
given to them last week.
At this point, have you handed to the prosecuting attorneys a copy of this report?
No.
All right. The objection sustained.
Your Honor, can I
Sounds
refer
very
to the Environmental Protection Agency material that I gave them last week?
It's in the public record, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's have the jury, please.
No sanctions? I want my money back for today's show. This is bull. I wanted sanctions. I'm sanctioning Judge Ito $250 for not giving me sanctions. Oh! Hold on, a courtroom went live. I gotta go get this. I'll be right back. It's that new judge from Georgia I was talking about.
All right, let the record reflect that we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Mr. Blazer.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Reeders, have you reviewed materials from the Environmental Protection Agency with respect to how much EDTA you can expect to find in human blood from diet?
Yes.
And what is the range that would be in the human blood from diet?
Overruled. Overruled. From the EPA records, from FDA records that are in the public, part of the public record he can testify to.
What range are we talking about for EDTA in the blood from diet?
Normally, in normal individuals, not more than 4 parts per billion.
Now, the amounts of EDTA found on the sock and the back gate, what range are they?
It went live 8 minutes ago, and I was here, which means I missed 8 minutes of a trial that I'm getting. But you guys will be okay with that. You probably won't even notice there's 8 minutes. I shouldn't even tell you, but I'm not a liar.
In the parts per million, so 1,000 times more.
Do you have an opinion on whether the EDTA found in the sock and the back gate could have come from food?
From food eaten by the person whose blood it is
Yes.
that it? No. In my opinion, that is so unlikely that I wouldn't even consider it.
Now, what other sources of EDTA in blood could there be?
Well,
Let me qualify that a little bit. In the amounts shown in the back gate and the sock.
well, basically, in blood from an individual who had intramuscular or intravenous EDTA or EDTA preparations for one or another, either diagnostic or therapeutic purpose. I mentioned it's used for that. Within a short time, because within a day or two after such an administration, all the EDTA is out of the body. It's 90% in a couple of hours that it leaves the body.
Did you see any indication in the FBI paperwork that either Nicole Brown Simpson or O.J. Simpson had EDTA injected into their systems on June 12th?
No.
What other sources of EDTA are there in blood?
Accidental outside contaminations, for example, a syringe that is used to draw blood from someone, could have been washed in detergent, and detergents have EDTA in them. EDTA could have been put right on that spot. I mean, it could be put on the whole sock, but then the control would also show it. Really there is no likely introduction of EDTO into circulating human blood other than its diagnostic or therapeutic injection, not orally. It's not given orally. It's bad for you given by mouth.
Do you have an opinion on whether the EDTA found on the sock and the back gate, in the quantities in which they were found, if that could have come from a purple top tube?
Yes, of course it could.
That's all I have.
Ross?
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Reeders, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, you just testified, sir, that according to you, your reading of an EPA report, that normally you will find no more than 2 or 4 parts per billion EDTA in a normal person's blood. Is that what you just said, sir?
Yes, that the
And-
normal is no more than 4 parts per billion. Right.
Okay, no more than. In other words, you're saying that the maximum amount of EDTA that you will find in a normal person's blood is no more than 4 parts per billion, correct?
That's what the EPA says, and I accept that.
And
I
you
have nothing better.
And that's based on a report that you had. Is that correct, sir?
It's an EPA publication, the OMTADs, which is one of their publications.
Now, if what that... Strike that. In the evidence stain, sir, you said you found EDTA in the levels of parts per million, correct?
I didn't find it. Mr. Martz did, and I agree that they are in the parts per million based on his analysis.
So the amount of EDTA found in the evidence stains on the gate and the sock were in parts per million. Is that right?
Yes, because it cannot detect anything that is less than parts per million in any of the samples that he prepared or tested. His detection limit is in the parts per million.
The answer is yes. The amount that was found in the gate and the sock were in parts per million, correct?
Yes,
And the amount that should be found, the maximum amount that could be found in a normal, healthy person's blood is in parts per billion, correct?
yes, according to the best available information.
And if that information is incorrect, and the actual information is in parts per million, then the amount found in the gate and the sock are a normal person's maximum allowable amount. Wouldn't that be true, sir?
If the best information is it's parts per million, then yes.
I have a report to show you, sir. We received the report. I'm showing to council now. I'd ask if you mark people's necks in order. Copy of the EPA report you refer to, sir? Do you have it with you?
No, I furnished a copy to you and to Mr. Martz. I mean, I furnished copies. Let me see what I have.
Mrs. Clark, the evidence number will be 537 on this.
Thank you, Honor.
What's the source of this report? Ms. Clark?
The source of that report is, excuse me.
Yeah.
Was,
I have a copy.
You have it, sir?
Yes.
The source of this is EPA, Your Honor. I'm going to show you what's now been marked as People's 537, and I'm going to ask if we can have it copied for council, so they can keep it with them.
How many pages is that?
1 page. Do you see the
Yeah.
relevant passage at the bottom, sir?
Yes, I see the problem.
Yes, you see the problem, sir? Is that what you said?
No, I see the paragraph.
Oh, I see. And what does it say here?
Comments by counsel.
Sustain. Jurors to disregard. Ms. Clark.
I said clearly paragraph.
I'm sorry?
I said clearly paragraph, not problem.
Paragraph. Tell the jury what this means in terms of amount, sir. EDTA should not exceed 2 milligrams per milliliter of blood. What does that translate to in terms of either parts per million or parts per billion?
Huh. What that is, it should not be less than 2,000 parts per million. That's the same amount that you find in EDTA blood. At 2 parts per million, at 2,000 parts per million EDTA in blood, the blood won't clot. People would bleed to death all over the place. It's absurd.
It's absurd. This is the basis for the EPA report that you referred to, sir. This absurd thing here.
Excuse me, counsel.
Let me
is that a
show you.
question?
I beg your pardon.
Wait. Is that a question, Ms. Clark?
It was foundational to a question I wanted to show in the report.
Be careful, Ms. Clark.
Let me show you another report. Now, the report that you just pulled out from your briefcase, sir, I'm going to cite you to a passage where it says, in situ amelioration AML, dredge undissolved solid. That's in your report, correct?
That's part of their report. That's part in the copy that I gave.
This is the EPA report that you used to base your opinion on, that the normal amount of EDTA that you'll find in blood, or the maximum allowable amount in a normal healthy person, would be in the parts per billion, correct?
This and the paper by Trujillo and Foreman is the other author.
Now, with respect to this report, sir, on which you just said you based your opinion, from the EPA, you read that to allow for the maximum allowable amount in a normal person to be 2 parts per billion.
Right.
Right. Now, is it possible, sir, that you have a typo here that caused you to conclude there were 2 parts per billion as the maximum allowable, when in fact it is 1,000 times less, 2 parts per million as the maximum allowable amount in a normal healthy person?
It's possible that this is a typo, but this is a 2,000 parts per million is absurd, as I told you. The people would be bleeding to death at that level.
In other words, if this is the correct EPA report, you disagree with it.
Well, obviously. It's obviously it's a typo in there. Because I can't imagine that the EPA would say that it's all right to run around with blood that won't clot.
Sir, you earlier just premised your opinion on the maximum allowable amount for a normal person on the EPA report, correct?
That's correct.
And in your report it says 2 ng/ml.
Yes.
And you interpreted that to mean 2 nanograms per milliliter?
Yes, that's the only one possible.
That's the only one possible from an ng as opposed to an mg, correct?
That's correct.
And so you determined that what the EPA was saying was the maximum allowable amount was 2 parts per billion, correct?
That they were saying what is consistent with the radioactive study, and that's what they say. Yes, sure.
But the
Makes sense.
radioactive study, sir, was not able to pick up EDTA in the blood, was it?
That's correct.
It gave no lower trace amounts that it was able to detect or measure in blood, did it?
I'm sorry.
That report back in the 50s of radioactive EDTA did not state any specific amount for anything detected in blood resembling EDTA. Isn't that correct?
That's not correct.
All right,
What
object. I thought we weren't going into this. I mean, I'm happy to.
Sustain.
I can't.
Sustain.
What? What was the objection?
Court's previous ruling on this regard, that report. Proceed.
Witness continues to refer to it, and I'd ask the witness's references to be stricken.
Proceed.
You just testified that you based your opinion on this EPA report. Isn't that what you just did on direct examination, sir?
I didn't say I didn't base it on anything else. Yes, that's what I said.
Thank you, sir. And you interpreted that report to say that the normal amount you would find, a maximum allowable amount in a normal, healthy person, would be 2 parts per billion, correct?
Yes.
And that the amount that you found in the gate and the sock stains were in the parts per million, correct?
I didn't find it. The amounts that the FBI found were in the parts per million. Yes.
And based on those differences, on the parts per billion that you would find in the normal, healthy person, which is far less, wouldn't you agree, than in parts per million, correct?
Yes.
Based on that, sir, you concluded that the amount of EDTA found in the gate and the sock stains could not have come from food, correct?
It is reasonably certain that they did not come from food.
And that is based on the maximum allowable amount that you
Counsel,
determined.
Counsel, you need to allow the doctor to finish his answer.
I'm sorry, doctor, did you finish your answer?
The question was regarding whether or not the EDTA and the gate and sock stains could have come from food.
not from ingested food being transferred into the blood of a person from whom that blood came, that in my opinion is so unlikely that I would not consider it.
Now, doctor, that is based on your interpretation. That is based on the report from the EPA that talks about the maximum allowable amount of EDTA in a normal person, correct?
And on the form and enter
And
your
I'll object
paper.
to the latter part of it is non-responsive under 352.
Oral. Proceed.
And you also determined, then doctor, if your interpretation or your reading of that report saying 2 parts per billion in the normal healthy person is based on a typo, and in fact they meant to say 2 parts per million, what they are stating there in the 2 parts per million is consistent with the amount of EDTA that was found by Agent Martz in the gate and the sock stains. Isn't that correct?
I beg your pardon, it's 2,000 parts per million. 2 milligrams per ml is 2,000 parts per million, the same or more so than you find in an EDTA tube. That is blood that won't coagulate.
Did you see the report on which it's based, sir? You know, you're insisting that this EPA report is wrong. Is that your testimony?
I don't say that the report is wrong if that's what they put in. I think it's either a typo or a complete absurdity.
Now I'm showing you the report faxed to us by the EPA on which the report you have is based, and that's the one just shown to Council People's 357. And it says the same thing, does it not? 2 milligrams per milliliter? Isn't that correct?
You know, we still have a copy of this. Could we have a copy of this, please?
It describes the content of a paper. It is not a report. It says that observation on the effect of the concentration of EDTA on the packed cell volume of various domestic animals confirm that in man the concentration of EDTA should not exceed 2 milligrams per milliliter of blood. The citation is the British Veterinary Journal. So I don't quite understand it if this is on animals or why this applies to man. And secondly, if it is supposed to, this is not a report, this is an abstract of a paper, it's an absurdity.
But it does use the same amount, does it not, doctor? You see, you have 2 ng/ml, they have 2 mg/ml, and we have a report that conforms to the report on which it's based. I just had you read it, have I not?
No, you haven't. You
Yes,
have
you
not made me read it.
You haven't seen this, doctor?
No, I haven't seen this.
Clark, this that Dr. Readers has is what?
People's 358.
You mean 538?
538?
538. You have your numbers transposed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let me write this down. Don't you recall us just reading this together, Dr. Readers?
No, you read it to me. I didn't have a chance to look at it. This,
Clark,
Have you read it, sir?
yeah, I've read it.
All right. So in my copy, it says
It's not
2 mg/ml, doesn't it? For the same
your
passage?
copy of something else. This is not the same. You will just please note that these are different references from another base than what I have.
Yes, but the paragraph that it applies to is word for word the same as yours, isn't it, doctor?
Except for that, that's correct.
Except for that. All right, so it's referring to the same thing, isn't it, doctor?
I expect so, but I don't know that.
Well, you just read it.
Well, I don't know that it refers to the same thing, but...
Let's read it together, doctor. Tell me when the words differ, all right?
They don't differ except for that one little thing that's absurd that's in here.
All right. All right, here it says 2 mg/ml.
Yeah.
Okay, the paper on which it's based that was sent to us from the EPA, People's 537, says the same thing, 2
The
mg/ml, correct?
Excuse me, the paper does not say that. Their abstract says that.
All right, the abstract says that, correct,
Yeah.
doctor?
Yeah.
All right. Now, these are based on animal studies, are they not?
That's what the paragraph says. I don't know that paper. I'd have to read it to give you an opinion on it.
Yet, doctor, you were willing to base your opinion on the parts per billion that you thought was actually written there earlier on direct testimony, correct?
Because all it did is corroborate what the radioactivity study showed, that they couldn't find any, and their detection limit is about 1 part per billion.
And doctor, in those radioactivity studies, there is no amount shown. Isn't
But it's
that correct?
clearly there. It's not written out, but it's clearly there. They used radioactively active labeled EDTA that they gave people by mouth. They could not detect it. They show you how many DPMs they can count at the various levels, and what is not detected is it's no more than 1 to 2 parts per billion. If
Doctor?
it's more than that, it's detected.
Doctor, what kind of equipment or facilities did they have for testing back then? Did they have the did they have the liquid chromatograph tandem mass spectrometer back then?
Oh, this has nothing to do with it. This is radioactive material fed to people, which is much more sensitive than any instruments that we have nowadays.
Well, let me
you
ask you
just
something.
can't feed it to people anymore.
Doctor, let me ask you this. Have you done any studies to take blood from normal people that is not preserved and tested for trace levels of EDTA? Have you done that?
I have done no such experiments. No.
Now, you wrote your report on July 17th of this year?
I guess so. I'll have to look at the date. It's the date that's on the report, whatever that is.
July 17th. And you got Agent Martz's reports back in the end of February, beginning of March, correct?
Which report?
The graphs and the notes by Agent Martz?
I don't remember the exact date, but probably in March sometime, I think. I'm
And
not
you
even
did-
sure I got them in March, but never mind. I got them quite a while ago.
And you didn't write a report documenting your findings until July 17th, correct?
That's when I was asked to write one, yes.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have written one at all?
Bobby, I kept saying they should be in Celebrity Deathmatch. Like the little Play-Doh. I think that everybody in here should have had like a 4-hour TV show with them, everybody fighting each other. Celebrity Deathmatch.
Oh?
I only write reports if I'm asked to write them. It's customary.
It's customary for you to do as you are instructed by the defense counsel that hired you, correct?
Only instructed in terms of what he wants me to do and what he wants me to do.
I would pay any amount of money. I would give all of Josh's money away if this could happen. All of Josh's money. Every penny of it. If I could see Dearden punch Furman right in the face. I mean, that would just make my life. That would be the best.
Give him. That's his prerogative.
Okay, and when you wrote that report on July 17th, you had not yet spoken to Agent Martz about his testing, correct? You had just
Right.
read what he had done, is that right?
Most of it, not all. I received some after that.
And after you wrote that report, you discovered that Agent Martz tested his own normal blood, unpreserved, for the presence of EDTA, and found EDTA, did he not?
His results that he forwarded to me showed an EDTA peak in the blood that he processed, yes.
In fact, isn't it true, Doctor, that his own unpreserved blood came up very similarly in results to the bloodstains found on the gate and the sock? Isn't that true, Doctor?
Surprisingly, yes.
Yes.
It
And-
excuse me, the numbers came up the same.
Hold on.
Excuse me.
Hold on. Wait.
I'm sorry.
Wait. Let me see counsel at sidebar with the court report, please. Thank you, counsel. Proceed. Ms. Clark, 230.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Doctor, as you've indicated, you are interpreting the Agent Martz's work, is that correct?
His results, yes.
You did
His
not-
results, yes.
You did not do any testing yourself, isn't that correct?
None whatever.
As a matter of fact, your lab doesn't even have this equipment, does it?
We don't have the equipment that Roger Marks has, that's correct. Not yet.
Do you even have the liquid chromatograph tandem mass spectrometer?
No.
Let alone one that has the electrospray.
Well, that's just one interface. No, we don't have any.
As a matter of fact,
The only one that we do have is the ability to collect fractions and analyze them separately by the mass spectrometer, something which I've done.
you yourself have never operated the electrospray, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Now, Doctor, wouldn't you agree that the person that would be the most qualified to testify and interpret the results of the operation of a given machine is somebody who operates that machine on a daily basis?
He should be the most qualified person to determine what the limits of ability of his machine are, since he works with it every day. Yes.
And in that regard, sir, You testified earlier that you thought retention time was a significant factor in determining whether or not these stains had the same qualities as those found in the reference blood samples with respect to the presence of EDTA. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And if an expert in the operation of this machine, such as Agent Martz, told you that retention time was an inappropriate factor to use because it is not discriminating for the presence of EDTA, wouldn't you agree that retention time should not be relied upon to determine whether or not a substance is or is not EDTA?
Well, if he were to tell me that, I would tell him that he's in error, because retention time is a characteristic of a substance in a chromatography system, provided there is some reasonable reproducibility of flow and other things that's possible. It's independent of the detection system and all these other things, and the variability may be greater in one than in another, but it is usable and it is used for that. Yes, that's what I would tell him. He didn't tell me that it's not applicable. Retention time is always a characteristic of a substance unless you change conditions completely.
Well, let me ask you this, Doctor. When you do testing to determine whether or not you think something is present, chemically speaking, wouldn't it be important to use factors that are as unique and as rare as possible in determining whether or not a compound is or is not a given chemical? Wouldn't you agree?
Only if you add the one other thing, and available. If you can do within the framework of what you can do, are you doing all you can to get the most intimately characterizing property of the substance that differentiates it from others? Yes.
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 Doctor, let me ask you this. If you are attempting to find women that look like me, wouldn't it be far more efficient to say you want a woman of this height and this weight, and I'm not going to say what that is, and this kind of hair and these kind of eyes and that kind of mouth and those kind of arms, as opposed to just saying I want a woman 5'6"? Wouldn't you agree?
Sustained.
Is it because of the weight thing, Your Honor?
It's too oblique for me.
All right. What I'm getting at, Doctor, is if you use criteria that are very broad, then you will include a lot that does not belong in that category, correct? As a general proposition.
Objection vague.
I will use all available criteria, broad, narrow, microscopic, and assign to each one a probative value for what a scientist does, and that is applying what is called a null hypothesis.
All right, Doctor, let me ask you this. If you assign probative value, if an expert in the operation of this machine who uses it every day, like Agent Martz, were to tell you that retention time has very little probative value because all chemicals seem to pass through at almost the same time, or within a minute, would you agree, Doctor, that that is not a factor that should be given great probative value in your determination as to whether or not a compound is or is not EDTA?
Well, if you were to tell me that, I would tell him that you are grossly mistaken, and if you earnestly believe that all compounds would pass through in a short time when you have a column, you don't know what you're talking about.
But, Doctor, you would agree, would you not, that someone who runs that machine every day would be a better expert, better able to determine what are the probative factors and are not, than someone like yourself who has never operated it. Wouldn't you agree, Doctor?
Oh, well. He should be, but if he says that, he isn't.
Doctor, isn't it true that most compounds will pass through this particular, the electrospray in particular, in about 1 minute?
They'll pass through the electrospray in 1 minute, but the separation occurs in the chromatography column.
That's right. And in the column, sir, how long does it take, if you know, do you even know how long it takes most compounds to pass through the column in the LC tandem MS?
That'll depend on what column and what flow you use. He doesn't say how much time it takes. He has everything down in terms of scan numbers. So I can't tell you. It's a few minutes between runs, and that rather surprised me that so little separation time is allowed. And but that's all. I can't tell you a thing about it. If he knows what he's doing, then he's using a column to separate substances. As far as I know, he knows what he's doing, and that's what he's doing. So he separates them.
Doctor, he conferred with you on at least one occasion, correct?
We talked about this on at least one occasion, yes.
Okay. And as a matter of fact, you've had his reports or his notes and the graphs for months, correct?
That's correct.
Was there anyone who prevented you from picking up a phone to ask him about these questions, sir?
Yes.
Who?
It's not customary for me to do that. I asked the attorneys to get me additional information or to suggest that I call him up and talk to him on the phone. I got additional information, not all that I asked for, but I did not get their okay to call him. And although I realize I can do it, I'm a free man, it's not a very proper thing if you are going contrary to the wishes of the people that you talk to, unless those wishes are in obvious crime or something.
And the defense attorneys told you when to write your report and who you may call and not call. Is that correct?
No.
You wait for their permission. Is that correct?
Not their permission. I do not wait for their permission. I ask them whether they have wishes, not orders. And if their wishes are reasonable, I'll comply with them, of course.
Doctor, you're a scientist, are you not?
Yes.
It's important for you to get as much data, as much information as you possibly can so that your answers are all as correct and reliable as they can be. Isn't that true?
If I can obtain that information properly, yes.
And would it have been improper for you to ask Agent Marks to furnish you with information on the validity or the probative value of retention time, for example, in this particular piece of equipment in which he is an expert into?
Objection. Argumentative vague as to what's improper, what that means.
Overruled.
Either ask that question specifically or ask it in a more general way, which I did to the attorneys, and that is that I would like to see the validation data for all the parameters that apply to this analysis. Retention time is one of the most important parameters, and the validation data that I received contained retention times which put it exactly into the range that they were. So it worked fine.
Yeah, Doctor, you operate the gas chromatograph, correct?
Yes.
And the gas chromatograph, retention time is a very important factor, isn't it?
In every chromatography, retention time or RF or RT, whatever they are called, it's the same thing. They just attach different letters to them, is one of the characterizing properties of individual compounds, or sometimes of groups of compounds, depending on how you're doing the analysis.
And Doctor, in the use of the gas chromatograph, you will be able to detect items by how long they take to separate, correct? And some items take a great deal more time than others.
Not how long they take to separate, but how well separated they are in the run.
By the time they get to the end of the column.
Well, separated somewhere, whether by the time they are measured by the time they get at the end of the column, the time is recorded, and the time between one peak and the next peak has to be sufficient so that there are clearly two peaks.
And what is the amount of time, maximum amount of time, that it would take an item to go through your column, the gas chromatograph column?
That is so variable. I have substances that go through the column, to one column in less than a minute. I have others which take 40 minutes in that or in other columns. It is as long as you want it to be. For instance, in the EPA studies, there are runs that are 2 hours long. So, you know, it's what you're looking for and what you're doing. As long as you know what you're doing, you're all right.
All right, Doctor, in your experience then with the gas chromatograph that you routinely operate, you can have items that run through the column for as long as 40 minutes, correct? That have retention time as long as that?
Yeah, I think in one of the types of analysis that we do many different types. There is as much, it's a screen and it extends over something like 40 minutes.
Now, Doctor, if Agent Martz were to tell you that because of the way the electrospray works, he's required to use very volatile liquid to push the material through the column, such as ammonia. And as a result of that, just about all substances go through in 1 minute. What, in your opinion, would be the probative value of retention time?
It would still be the retention time of a substance within 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 50 seconds, 60 seconds. The last one is 6 times as long as the first one. So whatever the time is, I'm sure he isn't pushing it through a column for the fun of it, because if it's so close that you can't differentiate, why use a column at all?
Nevertheless, Doctor, if that were the case, then wouldn't you agree that retention time is not a very discriminating factor in the LC tandem MS electrospray?
It is a discriminating factor. I don't want to assign to it very little. It's a discriminating factor. It's a property. It takes a certain length of time for EDTA to go through. So that's one of its characteristics. If he knows of 50 other substances not related to EDTA that have the same retention time, and if he'll tell me, then I say, well, then it still is a characteristic, but it is shared with other substances.
And so
now, if these substances are indeed things that you find in blood, then it's important. If they are substances that you only find in the Gulf of Mexico, then they are irrelevant. Because, you know, it has to be something that has a meaning in terms of the analysis that you do. If they are cyanide and other horrible poisons, then in this case, it's irrelevant because there's none there.
All right. Now, Doctor, then in that case, if there were, say, 50 other compounds that passed through at the same retention time, the probative value would be less.
Of
correct?
course, if you can tell me that that's so, I'd say it's less than if you only know of 2 others.
Well, doesn't the retention time to some degree depend on the kind of liquid used to push the material through the column?
Well,
Isn't that true?
Among other things, of course.
And if you routinely use the same liquid repeatedly,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it true, doctor, that you're going to wind up with a lot of compounds with the same retention or very similar retention time, as opposed to using different liquids?
I don't know that. No,
And
you
you
don't
don't-
have to. You have a good separation or you don't. I don't know.
And you don't know because you don't operate the electrospray, do you, sir?
Well, whether you operate the electrospray or not has nothing to do with that. Nothing whatever. Is if the whole material, the whole retention on that column is 1 minute, then you're working with the separation within 1 minute. There are gas chromatographs which separate 200 compounds in 1 minute that you put in there. So I'm sure that the same thing can obtain here, although LC is less of a separator.
But you would agree with me, would you not, doctor, that if the retention time in the electrospray is very similar for many different compounds, then retention time is not a very probative factor? Yes or no?
It's a probative factor. Very, I don't know what is very, how much?
Well, didn't you just tell us, sir, that you determine how probative certain factors are?
Yeah.
All right. Then obviously there is some variance between the importance of certain factors and others, correct?
Sure there is.
All right. Now, with respect to Agent Martz's blood, you have testified, sir, that since you wrote your report, you found out that Agent Martz tested his own blood and came up with characteristics just like those in the gate and the sock stains, which you determined were EDTA, correct?
There are too many questions in there. Let's take one at a time. Would you mind?
Is that an objection compound?
Yes, it is. Sustained.
Well, let me just show you a chart, sir. Now, while Mr. Blazer is reviewing that, I want to show you a chart that he showed you earlier. I'm putting up the fence. Mr. Blazer will tell me about it.
1257.
C. 1257C.
No, I'm sorry.
D. All right, you were speaking earlier, sir, of the fact that EDTA is comprised of the parent ion 292 and 1 proton is added, correct?
Yes.
And by the way, I think you indicated to counsel that the process of electrospray does not alter the ions. Can you say that, sir?
It doesn't change one chemical to another.
Testimony.
So that's
Whether
all.
they changed them. Oh.
Didn't you testify to that, sir? Tell me.
I testified that electrospray does not change one chemical into another. That includes ions of one chemical into ions of another chemical.
Okay, but the ions are changed in some respect, are they
They
not?
can be. They not all are. The main thing about electrospray is that it is capable of driving otherwise neutral molecules, large neutral molecules, readily into the mass spectrometer. That's its great advantage.
Now, when you do the gas chromatograph, in the work that you've done, you measure the straight weight, correct? The straight weight of the ion with no additions.
No. At positive, I also use M+1, which is the molecular weight plus 1. That's what you get.
And that's what you do here, do you not? You're adding 1 to the molecular weight.
Yeah, you're adding a proton. It's a positively charged hydrogen atom.
All right, now you've testified, sir, that the parent ion 293 is one characteristic of the EDTA, correct?
Yes,
And that there is a daughter ion 160, correct?
yes.
But that is not the full daughter spectrum that you see there, isn't that correct?
Not here. The full daughter spectrum is all the daughters.
And the other daughter, which is not shown on this chart, is 132.
That's one other daughter.
And that other daughter ion, 132, was not present on the gate and the sock stains, isn't that correct?
Oh, no, that's not correct. Remember that Mr. Blazer showed me a chromatogram which included the all three, the 293, the 160, and I think the 130 or whatever it was, and all three of them were there, although not in high concentrations. They were below the concentration at which the instrument prints out retention time, peak height, and number. It is below what is called the reporting limit of the instrument, the way it's set.
So what you're saying is,
Gravy.
you can't see it, it's really there.
No, I can see it, and so can the instrument. It just didn't label it. There's a big difference between that.
All right, so I want to go back to that chart.
All right?
All right, before we get to that chart, sir, we're going to try and locate that. Are you familiar with the term noise?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the maxim that a scientist requires 3 times the signal-to-noise ratio before saying that something could even exist? Have you heard that?
I've heard some people claim that, others 5, others 2, others 10. It depends on the circumstances. This is not from Olympus. The important thing in determining the presence or absence of something is, can you see it above the noise in one way or another?
All right, and when you say can you see it above the noise, you mean that there may be kind of jagged lines like this, but in order to call a peak an identification of something or a detection of something, that one peak that stands out has to be 3 times higher than those other lower jagged peaks. Isn't that correct?
No, actually what is used is not that it has to be so much higher than the noise, but that it has to be higher by more than a certain number of standard deviations of the mean of the noise. That is what is used.
In which case, you would expect, though, to see on the graph one peak higher than the rest. Isn't that correct?
Either that or a pattern which is clearly different and more like something there than nothing there.
All right, now you're looking at this graph again, sir.
Yeah.
Did you mark it down? What was the mark? What was the mark? Now you determined that on this chart is shown the other daughter 132 because at the same retention time, move over. Will you direct the arrow, sir, to where it was before? Tell the arrow where to go. See the arrow? Look on your monitor, yeah.
How do I do that?
Tell it to go right or left.
Go to the left a little bit. Hold. That's one peak. Go to the right a little bit. No, less than that. Here's another part of that peak. Go to the right. There, a little more. Little more. That's it.
Above.
Now there's another one. Now let's go to a valley. Go over. Now go to a valley. That's it. A little bit to your left. Now go another arrow a little bit to the right. Okay, that's good enough.
And it's your contention that that proves what?
That the retention time of the first of these arrows is in one of the places where the retention time of EDTA has appeared. You have to bear in mind that this is a scan over an extremely wide range, so that there's very little energy available to scan any one ion. So it is much less sensitive than if you do the same thing and only scan for 160 or for 293, but it's still strong enough to show a pattern which matches that seen in the parent ion and daughter ion chromatogram,
All right, but
which
you
is
would
a
agree
focus chromatograph.
You would agree, would you not, sir, that the other random peaks there are not 3 times lower than the peaks that you pointed out, correct?
They certainly are not.
All right. Now look down at 293. There is a very high peak in the very beginning, isn't there, sir?
The what?
That 293 is the parent ion, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't it? And you see a very high peak where we've just put the magenta arrow? In fact, that's the highest peak on that graph, isn't it?
That's correct.
But you didn't call that, you did not identify that as a parent ion, even though that does have a high peak, maybe 3 times as high as some of the other peaks on that chart. Isn't that correct?
No, I did not, because I have nothing to go on to call it a parent ion.
Then, in fact, what this graph shows, sir, in your opinion, as the 132, is based solely on the fact that you see something at the retention time.
At the same retention time where I see the 160 and the 292, and at the same retention time where in the more focused chromatogram that we looked at previously, where you can see much better that 160 and that it's in the same place, and even the pattern is somewhat similar. So that's why I say that you saw it before at 160. Now if you're scanning the whole thing, even though it is so much weaker, I mean, this is probably, I don't know, it could be as much as 100 times less sensitive than the 160 iron. You still see it. And in the same place where the 160 is, you also see the footprints of the 132 iron.
And so are you willing to say, sir, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that based on this graph here of the 132 daughter ion, that it is present on the sock? Is that your testimony, sir?
That what is present on the sock?
The 130, that you have the full daughter spectrum on the sock, based on this reading of your graph of 132.
This is the full daughter spectrum on the sock, unless there are other smaller ones, unless there are other little pieces around which are not looked here. And that's, in general, is the weakest, the least sensitive of the methods that he could use, but at the same time, it's more specific. You're trading off one for the other.
All right, let's
So is it...
We're going to take a recess at this point. For a break, and Doctor, you can step down.
Okie dokie,
All right,
smoky
Deputy Mayor, let's have
pokies.
the jurors, please.
No, we're not having that. I'm not having no jurors on my show. You can have jurors on your show. Leave my show alone. All right. Even though we're outstandingly late today, now we're backed up for the rest of the day. We did it. We made it to the end of OJ. No, we didn't. We made it to the end of today's presentation of O.J. Simpson. Orthogonal? Whatever. James. We made it to James. And now we're going to go and we're going to get some work done. Get some work done. Whatever you do in the next 10 minutes, get some work done. 10 minutes. Go hard for 10 minutes. And then take a break. Love you guys. I do. Thank you so much for coming out today. I appreciate it. I do. I will see you all tomorrow. I hope you have a great day. Bye, guys.